Connecticut College in the fall to study environmental studies, hopefully. I joined last summer. It's kind of been like, I guess, a year at this point after I started the environmental club, and then I got in contact with Sherry, and then I joined. You kind of just have to like go with the flow. But before going into it, I honestly like did not know like what the structure was going to be or like how it was going to play out. But I think mostly I was just like, it was never something I had done before, so it was just really cool to be a part of that. And like hosting, to kind of be like a leader in some sense, was also something like I'd never done before, so that was really cool. I'll have to think about this for a second. I think that with the environmental club, like this isn't as serious as like open-mindedness in terms of like racial justice, but I think that kind of when I was leading the club, being open-minded to other people's ideas, I guess, is something that I found really important, kind of being like the unofficial head of the club. And I think that even though we had such a small group, it was really important for me to make sure that everyone felt like they were being heard and like no one, it didn't feel like an exclusive community where only some ideas were gonna get the spotlight. So that was something I never really had to like use before, I guess, because I'd never been in that position. So I think that, you know, was something I learned throughout that experience. Like going to Sherry's house, especially like in the winter, like having a place to go like after school, that's not like an extraordinary memory, but I feel like personally I just really enjoyed those times. Like it's so calming, and like the cafes can get like a little intimidating sometimes, so just like brainstorming and just talking about honestly like whatever was just like my favorite part of this. Like talking about MBTI, being like an introvert, I definitely thought that was like a weakness at first because I wasn't naturally like really outgoing and super friendly like on the outside. And so even like once when I was hosting a cafe, like one of the women in my group was like, oh, this doesn't seem like something you'd want to do. And I was like, yeah, but I actually like really like doing it. And I just feel like doing the climate cafes has helped me to more accept that like everyone is going to host differently, everyone's going to lead differently, and like that's okay. And
guys, bye truck.
And like being shy, and I used to like think that like being shy was like part of being an introvert, but I feel like that it's like its own thing, and I really needed to like move past that because it was. And even though I, you know, still struggle with being more quiet, I think that I've realized that I do need to like let that part of myself go and like embrace like the actual introvert qualities of myself, which are more like thoughtfulness and like attention to detail and like more deep thinking, things like that, that I can still like lead in a group without being held back by being like more quiet. And there's like so many, like I've read like a couple of books on like the superpowers of being an introvert. Like there's a really great TED talk about it too, and just like the idea that everyone just leads differently is really important, because I always felt like I needed to be like really loud and very outgoing in order to like feel validated. Like I definitely had like a lot of imposter syndrome when I was a part of like the environmental club, because I felt like someone could do this better, like I'm not the right person to do this. But I think the climate cafes specifically have helped me to like realize that.
Tell the world one thing about yourself or about anything, what would you tell?
I feel like I kind of already talked about this, but I do think that I definitely come off as a very shy person at first, but I think that, and it's definitely really hard for me to like get comfortable with people, and it takes me a while to like feel like I can just be myself around people. But I think I would say, like, just because I come off as shy and quiet doesn't mean that I don't want to like reach out to others and get to know people. I definitely think that people who are shy come off as a bit reserved and maybe hesitant to get to know others, but it's kind of just like a defense mechanism in some ways, and like a fear to be vulnerable because I don't want people to judge me for the person that I am.
Do you have a routine or like self-care activity you do if you're either feeling stressed or you need something to help you?
I probably would say journaling. I started journaling a couple of years ago when I was like, I just felt like I had like a lot going on in my head, and it's definitely helped me to like get my thoughts out. And I feel like when I was younger I used to try keeping a journal, but I just write out like what I did that day and just like very surface level things. But I feel like really writing about like what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and why that is has helped me to kind of understand a little bit more like why I'm doing those things, and then like address like maybe where that's coming from, and just feel like a little lighter, because I feel like your thoughts can get very heavy sometimes. Actually tell yourself that you are capable of doing something, and like that like you are like deserving of doing something, like that just really shifts your mindset. And especially like when you're in a new situation and you're telling yourself, like constantly judging yourself, constantly criticizing yourself, like that's just inhibiting you to like really embrace, I guess, the person that you are in those situations. So I feel like more encouraging, talking to myself more encouragingly and not as negatively can hopefully help. What I said that America isn't is like what I feel like being a good human is being compassionate and just being empathetic towards other people. But I also feel like compassionate to me sounds like a very passive thing, and like selflessness sounds more like an active behavior. So I feel like being selfless and being self-aware, which are two things that I think this country struggles with a bit more, are really important, because I really feel like being a good human is being able to make those human connections and being able to think beyond yourself. Obviously not like compromising your like well-being and health by being too selfless, but there's definitely like a way to balance those two, where you're not always thinking about yourself, but you're not always thinking about others. I hope that in 10 years, am a little more confident in myself, and also like whatever I'm doing. I don't really know specifically what I want to do, but I hope whatever I'm doing, like I'm happy that I'm doing that, and I'm not like regretting that I chose to do that thing, if that makes sense. And doing something that makes me feel fulfilled, whatever form that future, what that decision is going to have, whether it's on me as a person or just like on the world as a whole, if that makes sense. So I feel like for me, I really think about my choices, and indecisiveness might also play a part in that, but I also think that really making sure that your decision like is going to be just as good now as it's going to be in the future.